Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
National Interest this week takes a break from national politics and looks at some complex geopolitical issues, some geopolitical complexities closer to home, very close to India, namely Afghanistan, or what came to be called as the Af-Pak region. Why? Because we know there is a flurry of activity between Delhi and Kabul. Abdullah was in Delhi today. Hamid Karzai has been in touch. Indian envoys have been meeting Afghans. They've also been in touch with the Taliban. So there is a flurry of activity, but the writing on the Hindu Kush wall is quite clear, which is that Taliban are on the ascendant. Where does that leave India? Does India now have to feel like a jilted lover that the Americans have left? They have left Afghanistan with Pakistan and they've given Pakistan an unlikely victory and Taliban will take over. Where does India go? Now, should India be heartbroken that Joe Biden has made such a clinical and such a hasty retreat? Or are there opportunities in the new turn in this situation? Is a relationship of hostility with the Taliban and inevitability? जन्म जन्म की दुश्मनी है उनके साथ में, or can this relationship change? Similarly, do we take it for granted that they will continue to be an Islamic militia based in Pakistan, controlled by Pakistan, particularly when they might have a country or a territory of their own, even if not the entire country? So must we see the Taliban as permanent enemies? So after George Bush invaded Afghanistan and co-opted Musharraf's Pakistan in the so-called war on terror, which Pakistan joined, got paid for it, at the same time kept on helping the Taliban and giving them refuge as well, George Bush's administration gave the region a name. The name was Af-Pak. Does India now accept this Af-Pak as a given, that now the Americans go away, this region is still Af-Pak, which means it's part of the Pakistani sphere of strategic power, or can we dehyphenate our strategic thinking here? We've been telling America for decades, dehyphenate your policy towards South Asia. That is, don't follow an India-Pakistan policy. Follow an India policy and a Pakistan policy. Do what you want with Pakistan, but follow an India policy because we are a much bigger power than to be just hyphenated with Pakistan. So following the same logic, can we also dehyphenate our strategic minds from this Af-Pak formulation? So look at Pakistan as one, Afghanistan as the other. That is the important question we are raising. In fact, many years ago, I had written an article, Get Out, Leave Af to Pak. That is when there was a lot of debate, what will happen when the Americans go away, what role should India play? And I had then said, look, many superpowers have tried to control Afghanistan. They've all failed and destroyed themselves or damaged themselves in the process. So now the Pakistanis think they can do it. We should tell them, be my guest, go ahead, try your luck. Now the situation has moved on from there even further. First, is there any evidence at all that Taliban, out of dependence or gratitude, will remain a vassal of the Pakistanis forever? An inseparable ally linked to Pakistan through a friendship higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans. I am stealing that expression from the rhetoric of the Pakistan-China summits. They describe the relationship like that. Or your question could be, why not? Weren't the Taliban like that the last time in their first innings? But as statutory warnings with mutual funds say, past performance is not necessarily a guide to the future. Would that also work with geostrategic interests, that past performance will not guide the future? Let's keep our minds open. Now, nations, societies, whatever their ideological driving force, ultimately they work in their self-interest. See, China and America, ideologically, exactly the opposite poles. In 1971, both got together using Pakistan's secret good offices and put their forces together to fight the Soviet Union. So nations, societies They leave ideology aside and they work in their supreme self-interest. That is a given. That is something that we know for sure from the history of humankind and also the history of strategic thought. Now, is there anything to indicate that Taliban would be different? Taliban would not see where their best interest is, or will they be guided by what is in Pakistan's best interest? That's a question. Their way of life, interpretation of Islam, view on women, education, and civil liberties may be abhorrent to modern societies. But does that necessarily make them enemies of India? India makes friends with Saudi Arabia quite nicely. Are they likely to launch a war on India or join Pakistan in its war on India? What is their casus belli? What is the reason for them to fight India? What will there be in it for them to convert India into an Islamic nation or make it part of some mythical caliphate? There is nothing that the Taliban have done so far that indicates that. In fact, even when they were in power earlier, hardly any Afghans had come and fought in Kashmir with the Indian terrorists, militants, insurgents. There were a few foreigners who came in the early 90s and the odd Afghan, but nothing that showed a pattern of any kind at all. They may be now, Taliban may be obscurantist, brutal, medieval, anti-women, untrustworthy. All of these things are worse. One thing they are not is stupid or suicidal. Because if they were so, they would not have survived a very unequal fight for 2 decades in the Americans and emerged victorious. So, you may or may not like to admit it, but the Taliban have the brains. They have a tactical mind. Presumably, they also have a strategic mind because it takes something to defeat such a preeminent superpower over 20 years. The US has not cut and run in no time. Now, unlike the Mujahideen of the past, in fact, they did not even have the benefit of big powers backing them. The Mujahideen of the past got weapons and money from America, China, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, all kinds of countries, plus intelligence help, plus propaganda help. These Taliban were on their own. They just had Pakistan's back. Pakistan was on their side. That too, mostly covertly, because Pakistan was two-timing the Americans, so they were also playing stalwart ally in the war on terror with America, give them little trophies like Osama bin Laden, but also giving refuge to the Taliban and helping them fight, again in a very covert manner until the Americans leave. Then they might become more open. Now, there is a downside to a strategic vision that looks at India's west through the Pakistan blinkers, because there is a world to India's west beyond Pakistan. Everything is not Pakistan's sphere of influence. We feel jilted that the Americans are going away, giving Pakistan a famous victory, that the Pakistanis now have something they always wanted, strategic depth. To understand how Pyrrhic this victory might be, read this article by Hussain Haqqani in Foreign Affairs. I am sharing a link with you. Please take a look at that article. Now, one look at the map of the so-called Af-Pak region. Look at the terrain and you know that the strategic depth for Pakistan is such a fantasy that only geniuses in the GHQ in Rawalpindi, whose brains are acknowledged to nestle in some part of their anatomy other than the head, only they could have fantasized about such a strategic depth, because they began hallucinating about this in 1986-87. Why? Because that is when General Krishnaswamy Sundarji launched his very ambitious and a little bit risky exercise brass tacks. Now, exercise brass tacks involved a large body, very large bodies of armored forces, mechanized forces from the Indian side in the desert. And that created in the Pakistani strategic mind the vision of a Warsaw Pact-like massed tank assault into Pakistani plains. And Pakistan is not a very wide state. If you look at the map, the Pakistani plains are not particularly wide. So the fear was, if Indians come in, thousands of tanks come in, as was envisaged or visualized in exercise brass tacks, where would we go? We need depth. So somebody thought that strategic depth will be Afghanistan. Now, if you look at that terrain, I mean, what will you take to Afghanistan if you can't defend Pakistan? I don't know, over those mountains and over those passes. Also, even if Taliban take over Afghanistan tomorrow fully, would the Pakistanis be so stupid as to maybe shift some of their nuclear weapons there for protection, for safety, or even move there two of their precious F-16 squadrons? Unlikely that such a thing will happen. So that strategic depth is now an outdated concept. It has no value. 35 years since it was first imagined, the world has changed. So has the strategic and tactical military picture. Besides, there are nuclear weapons. If some Pakistani generals still think they can retreat across the Hindu Kush, they must be nuts. But Taliban are not nuts. Even the Pakistani generals are not that bad. Over 75 years, there is one thing that the world has come to acknowledge, that Pakistani generals are actually quite brilliant tactically. It is just that they are delusional and reckless when it comes to strategic thinking, because they think that if they can have a little tactical success, it will lead to some big strategic victory. See what happened in Kargil. They had tactical success, they quietly came in stealthily, they took all those peaks, but what happened? Their idea strategically was that this will force India to negotiate Kashmir. No such thing happened. They actually suffered a famous or infamous from their point of view defeat. So they can make this mistake. Now, if we look at the picture with an uncolored vision, so blinkers are off, we can make a fairer assessment of who won and lost in Afghanistan. Definitely the Taliban won. Whatever happens ultimately, they won, and the Americans and their allies lost. Those two things we know for sure. But has Pakistan won? If the Taliban have proved one thing in these 2 decades, it is that they are way smarter than their big brother. Pakistan has always fantasized about using the Afghan nation for its own strategic depth, but in this case, all these years the Taliban have reversed the equation. They have used Pakistan for their own strategic depth. And now that they've used Pakistan for strategic depth, they are in a position to move into their homeland, which is exactly what they are doing right now. Using that depth, in fact, they've defeated America that checked into our region 2 decades ago. Biden's claims of victory that we have achieved all our objectives is as hollow as George Bush's criticism of him leaving. That Afghanistan isn't quite Hotel California of the rock band Eagles conception, where you can check out but not leave, is something that defies strategic logic. And Biden has said that. Biden has now clearly said, I can check out and I can leave. I am checking out and I am leaving. I am not stuck here. In simpler English, this would be called use and throw. Now, the Americans leave a vacuum in Afghanistan for sure. Taliban are taking territory by the day. See where that leaves Pakistan. If the fighting goes on for a long time, then the wounded will come into Pakistan's hospitals, refugees will come in, border will again become porous, and management of those border districts and states and territories in Pakistan, which at the best of times is poorly governed, will become an even bigger challenge. So Pakistan's problems will not go away. Even if the Taliban finish this off quickly, either through military victory or through buying up people or buying up warlords, doing deals with them, then they may not be that dependent on Pakistan at all. In that case, other Islamic countries will come and help them. Turks will be there, Saudis will be there, Iranians, the Russians, they will all be watching the situation very, very carefully. There's nothing in Afghan history to suggest that under any rulers, Afghanistan will become a complete vassal of, say, China plus Pakistan. They'll be caught in that pincer because whoever rules Kabul will try and find their own way. They've always done so. Now, when I'm saying all this, I run the risk of being described as a Taliban apologist. Far from it. The fact is that Government of India is already talking to the Taliban, and they are not bashful about it. In fact, they've said that they are talking to the Taliban. At the same time, chances that Ghani government will decisively defeat the Taliban militarily is near zero. The most it can ensure is a violent stalemate around key big urban centers. That is Kabul, Mazar-e-Sharif, Jalalabad, maybe Kandahar, Herat, places like that. Garrison cities. The best outcome for India right now might still be a realistic negotiated settlement between the Ghani government and the Taliban that brings about a peaceful settlement, a reasonably peaceful settlement, and a sharing of power with minimal bloodletting. India has some leverage there which India can use, but very little leverage to influence the course of military confrontation. India has the limitations provided by both geography and geopolitics there. India has no direct route into Afghanistan. India is maybe as a crow flies not far away, but between India and Afghanistan lies the completely hostile territory of Pakistan. And that is the geographical and geostrategic limitation for India comes from the fact that Afghanistan's other neighbors, next door neighbors, that is Iran, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and by implication Russia, China, they will have a lot more leverage there than India could physically. So India has to work within those limitations. Now strategically, this is the most prudent way forward. That is, use your leverage with the Ghani government and in this situation to bring about a peaceful resolution. The Taliban have no need or compulsion to fight India. They definitely not be fighting Pakistan's war against us. They've never done so for anybody. They neither want to nor have the resources to radicalize India's Muslims. Plus, they will continue to have problems of their own in their broken, incredibly poor, unstable country, seeing a massive flight of talent and capital right now. People are leaving Afghanistan by the droves. For India to set this course, however, the Modi government will need to remove another set of blinkers. And that is the Hindu-Muslim polarization blinker. That is seeing a political force as hostile just because it's conservatively Islamic. That is the Taliban. We know that it is central to their electoral proposition. They can't win without polarization. But the world around India has changed in the last year and a half. They need to make adjustments too. The coercive flexibility vis-a-vis Pakistan has vanished for now, at least until the Chinese are sitting in dharna in Ladakh. This is not available. What is on the Chinese mind? We don't know. I wish I could ask Xi Jinping, why did he suddenly decide to go to Tibet for the first time in his tenure and also keep it unpublicized. So we don't know what message he's trying to convey, but certainly the message can't be that he is pulling out of Ladakh in a hurry. The Modi government also has reached out to Saudi Arabia, which is the custodian of Sunni conservatism all over the world, as also UAE, following a wise dictum, just as you say, enemy is your friend, it also works to your benefit to befriend the enemy's friend. The same logic, why can't it be applied to the Taliban as well? If they are the enemy's friend, you can reach out to them as well. That will immediately cause consternation for your enemy. On the other hand, if you box yourself in permanent hostility, that is exactly what Pakistan wants. They want to be hyphenated with the Taliban. It is possible, it is also pragmatic. It is just that it calls for a big reset in BJP's domestic politics. Their challenge then will be to find a formula beyond the plain Hindu-Muslim binary, Hindu-Muslim polarization, and that is the challenge. So this big strategic challenge for India is also, in a way, how India addresses this is linked to India's domestic politics.